They say money makes the world go round. And they're right. Whether you like it or not, it's true. Money rules our lives. Everybody lives for it, because if we don't, we die. I do overtime on overtime and just about survive. How can people work so hard and still not be surviving? The fact that I still live in London is surprising. All of us know what life is like. The cost of living's rising. Even with a 9 to 5, our wages aren't sufficing. And then you got to pay tax. You got direct tax, indirect tax, alcohol tax, cigarette tax, income tax, VAT, national insurance, CGT. That's gains on capital tax, local tax, national tax, global tax, climatical tax. I'm shocked we ain't got a taxable tax. We pay stamp duty, fuel duty, business rates, council tax, import, export, customs duty, tax on property, inheritance tax. They tax you on the road and they tax you in the sky. They tax you when you travel, when you drive and when you fly. We all pay tax on almost everything we buy. They tax us when we're born and they tax us when we die. What I'm trying to say is that we pay a lot of tax. Now, no one likes paying tax. It's not exactly fun. But I guess without it, our country wouldn't run. Taxation is the way we pay for services and welfare. Police, firefighters, benefits, healthcare. Tax is paid by the public and it's spent on the public. Well, that was until austerity was introduced and f***ed it. Now, when I say the word austerity, some people get confused. They've heard the word before because they've heard it on the news, but it's hard to understand in depth. It's kind of complicated. They understand a bit, but no one's ever just explained it. Like, what is austerity? Why do we choose it? How does it affect me? Is it an improvement? Is it really working? Have they ever proved it? Do we really want it? Why do we still do it? These are the questions that I'll address below, because austerity affects you all, and you deserve to know. So picture this. There's $90 trillion on the planet. Billions are given to investors to manage. They've always looked for markets that are calm with little risk, and they decided housing is where they'd put their chips. So investors gave mortgages to people who could pay them. They made a lot of money. The market was amazing. But then they got greedy through the new deregulations and started giving mortgages to anyone who craved them. These were called subprime mortgages. The investors didn't care if people couldn't pay their mortgage off because the housing market was perhaps the most secure there was. If people miss their payments, then their houses just get repossessed and then the bank can sell them on, and so the bank's not left with debt. So investors gave mortgages they knew that people couldn't pay because they could always profit from the houses they would take away. But millions of people lost their homes, which surprised the banks. Housing supply surpassed demand, and so house prices crashed. Suddenly, every bank, government and company involved in these mortgages all faced redundancy. They were all billions of pounds in the minus. And they called it the global financial crisis. In a nutshell, everyone was screwed. Them, us, me, you. People around the world just couldn't believe the news. But luckily our leaders knew just what to do. They said it was a crisis of a global scale. They said we had to help the banks, they're too big to fail. That if we didn't save them, the economy would cave in, so we bailed out the banks instead of sending them to jail. Now, you might be wondering how much we paid to save them, how much we lent them, how much we gave them. Well, in the UK, we paid 500 billion. And some reports say it was up to $1 trillion. After the bailout, we were in a mess. Our deficit was huge. Our deficit's the country's debt. We had to make a move to produce money fast and stimulate an economic growth we hoped would last. We dreamed of prosperity. We needed a remedy, and our government decided that the answer was austerity. In other words, you remember all that tax that you worked so hard to give them? Well, they used that money to pay the country's debt, so the country had less money left to fund the public system, plus they privatised services till there was nothing left. In other words, they fed us shit, and us lot swallowed it. The banks got paid, and we got the following. Cuts to local government, over 12 billion. 500,000 council workers lost their jobs. Cuts to universities, 800 million, with rising fees leaving uni students at a loss. Cuts to youth services, 300 million. 60 mil cut from the budgets for our parks. Cuts to infrastructure worth 15 billion. Cuts to adult social care, 3.5. 52% cut from education, thousands more homeless people on the pavement, 15,000 bed cuts for NHS patients, these are real statistics, not speculation. They cut 343 libraries, 64 museums, 3,000 bus routes, 380 care home companies, 3,000 mental health workers have been cut too, 200 playgrounds shut, 350 youth clubs shut, connections shut, leisure centres shut, over 600 Sure Start centres shut. Cuts to our NHS. 40 billion. Over 60 hospitals and trusts are facing closure. Health and social care cuts alone are killing citizens. 120,000 deaths and over. But these are just figures. And we are not figures. We are real people with feelings, ambitions. We're the people who live with the results of their decisions. We're parents, we're children, we're brothers, we're sisters. We're the people who starve to death because they've been sanctioned. We're the elderly who die at home freezing and abandoned. We're the thousands of disabled people buried in the earth because they killed themselves after being told they're fit for work. We're the sons who read the suicide notes left behind. We're the daughters of the 80,000 claimants left to die. We're the nurses, the workers, the lonely, the homeless, the everyday person, the broken, the hopeless. What exactly has to happen before we reverse this? How many have to die before we say that it's not working? It's harmful and it makes no economic sense. If you want growth, you don't cut, you spend. When they cut public spending and raise our taxes, we have less money, so we spend less on average. We buy less products and purchase less services, so companies produce less and need less workers in. People lose their jobs, unemployment goes up, so we pay less tax because we're earning less funds. Income tax revenue drops in huge measurement, plus they spend more on JSA and state benefits. People ask why there's no money in the country. Well, another reason there's no money in the country is big corporations make money in the country, don't pay tax on it and move it out the country. The rich getting richer won't put money in the country. Cutting deficit won't put money in the country. If the government doesn't put money in the country, there won't be any money in the country. Ultimately, there's just one thing we need to know. You got to spend money to make money. And that's why Britain's broke. We've suffered 10 years of these devastating policies. They've killed hundreds of thousands and damaged the economy. But I'm not trying to be right. I don't want apologies. I just want arrests and the future that they promised me. Because when they cut our funds, they cut our throats. They cut our help, they cut our hope, they cut us deep, they cut we bleed, they cut us then, they cut and go, they cut to bone, they cut our cash, they cut our necks and fed the banks, and cut them slack, cut them back, they cut a rope, they let us hang, it's them who cut your son's wrists, they cut short your daughter's life, they cut us every day in every way we live our little lives, they're spilling our blood, they're killing our mums, they cut us all, they started war, but if they want to cut, we'll build an army on the scars that form.
They said they loved you, but then they cut you. They never loved you, they only fucked you. They said they loved you, but then they cut you. They never loved you. They never loved you.
Run up on HMRC, take an arm, being fake Versace, stamp at the march like basic parties, take up at the part and claim my money. Give me the pay, give me the money back.